Hello everyone in Katribu, welcome to Spotlight. My name is Vernon Velasco.
And I'm Dina Ventura.
And today we are joined by three beautiful lady artists who would talk about the reorganization of the practice and their own exhibition called Namon Subong.
Istorya Namon
Istorya
Subong.
Namon Subong, our stories now in Negros. Yeah, but first Dina, just a little bit about how you are doing. I know you are very much, used to. Social distancing is not your problem. Being alone is part of your creative process. So how are you doing, girls?
Thank you very much, Vernon and Dina, for the introduction.
Okay.
Thank you for being interested in our show. Personally, I'm much better now compared to 1 year ago. And it really helps to keep busy with art projects.
Okay, so Gina Jocson is the curator of the exhibit.
Yeah. How about Katarina and Moreen?
Well,
Jean.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mox.
Okay, ako baliktad, Jean. Last year I was better. I was great. But now I'm starting to feel the anxiety.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Katarina.
I actually get what you mean, Mox. In a way, I think last year, although there was much chaos, we were also so very busy with different fundraising activities. So I guess that was in a way a little bit of some distraction, but also helping out others. But now that the activity has sort of lulled down, I get that feeling of anxiety also.
How do you articulate that? I mean, can you elucidate more on that sort of wrench the artist feels whenever you're confined in this kind of
Situation.
unique situation, if you will?
Oh yes, well, one of the things that I practice on my end, because I'm stuck here in Manila, so I can't fly back home to Bacolod. I try to find like the joy in little things. So I take my time very slowly in the morning instead of filling my head, for example, with all the deadlines and all the stuff that I need to focus on. I really practice taking time for myself first before I start the day. Yeah.
That's interesting. This leads to my question about your exhibit. It's an ongoing exhibit of Negrense women artists, as I understand it. And it came about because of the pandemic. Am I right, Gina? Can you tell us a little bit more about this exhibit?
Yes, Dina, that's exactly right. Just a bit of a backgrounder. 1 year ago, practically 1 year ago, at Art Fair Philippines 2020, which was February last year, we had another show called Istorya Context Amoni. So that's Ilonggo. Ilonggo for story, context, this is ours. And that was about the investigation of the identities of Negrense women using text as a prompt. For this current show, which is called Istorya Namon Subong, which is Ilonggo for our stories now, it's again about the identities of Negrense women through their stories, but this time as viewed from the context or the lens of a year's worth of lockdown. So it's again an investigation on their identities and how the pandemic has affected these identities, if ever, has affected the artists, if ever. So really, it's part of the artist's DNA to react and reflect on what is going on around her. So there's really, you cannot really escape from the pandemic. It is affecting every one of us. Sorry, yes?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, so the point is, it is really about identity, but set within the context of this last year of the pandemic. But my challenge to the artists was try as much as possible not to explicitly depict PPEs or hand sanitizer or alcohol unless these images are critical to their commentary on identity. So these are not pandemic works, as you can see. They're really about identity.
Okay.
You know, just a little bit about being a Negrense. I mean, what is the recurring theme? You said PPEs are not there. I mean, you have object arts and, you know, the paintings. What is the recurring, let's say, object in those paintings that, you know, very much depict what Negrense woman is really about?
Do you mean, is there a recurring image among all the artworks that reflect the pandemic?
And being a Negrense, uy.
The identity
yes, ma'am.
of the
The
Negrense.
identities.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, each one has done their research and you know, experimentation, and they all came up with very different works using various media. So it's a multimedia collection. Maybe Katarina and Moreen can talk about their works first before I mention the works of all the other 6 artists.
Katarina.
Yes. Okay. Well, my work for the series, since earlier we already talked about anxiety. So one of the things that I battled during the year of lockdown was that, and how to, you know, untangle the thoughts and feelings I was feeling over the lockdown. So my works are more often than not introspective and personal to me. So for the show, I decided to create a series of self-portraits, visually relaying my experience while in lockdown. And this experience is on personal growth and being propelled to maturity by learning one of the very traditional activities of women. So learning to cook for the household or for the loved ones. It's an activity fully embraced by the women in my family. So one of my main inspiration for the works actually is also my grandmother. So in this way, I think perhaps subconsciously, I was trying to emulate my Lola because she was this strong, steadfast Negrense woman. And I really, you know, she was larger than life to me as I grew up with my grandparents in Bacolod. Another element to the work in the series is the recipe that I chose to, in a way, to visually show. So it's a clear vegetable soup called laswa. It's a very simple Ilonggo dish, and it's often prepared by my grandmother. So I also gathered strength from the comfort that it brought me throughout the lockdown. So I would still enjoy that comfort food to this day. So yeah.
There you go. That's the soup. I see the vegetables.
Yeah.
Yes, a very healthy dish.
And what about you, Moreen?
Moreen, yeah.
Okay, I had a different take on this call by Gina. And I have actually 5 terracotta sculptures in the exhibition inspired by the barter phenomenon in Negros Occidental. What seemed to me like a barter renaissance happened during the early part of the lockdown, which was in May 2020. And it was started by a mother who made a call to exchange her extra tube of eyeliner to vegetables. And so she made a Facebook page and made a call. And this page soon garnered like 232,000 members from all over Negros. Imagine that. The page was called, the Bacolod Barter Community, which has benefited thousands of families, especially when there was quarantine restrictions during the early phase of the pandemic. It shows the resilience and resourcefulness of Negrense women. And at the same time, that page was also became a venue for kindness and faith and in humanity for a lot of Negrense. So for me, I had to capture that moment. And me also being challenged with the materials, because we usually order our paints online, and this time delivery was it took a long time, and so I also had to be resourceful. And for the first time, I used terracotta, which is actually the termite mound.
What?
Termite mound,
In
yeah.
front, yeah, it's a termite mound in front of my studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Resourcefulness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the universality of,
So that was
isolation.
the inspiration.
Yeah. I mean, isolation is very universal, di ba? I mean, how do you make it uniquely Negrense? I mean, how do you, what aspects of your cultural background did you draw most inspiration from?
May I answer that?
Yes,
By
ma'am.
showing the works of the other artists, because I think their works answer your very question. So we have 6 other artists. By the way, our artists are from various generations, hometowns, and family backgrounds. So we have a good mix. That's why the resulting collection, I believe, engenders a lot of good conversation and dialogue and questions. So I would like to start with Elwa Gonzalez. She's a young woman who became the default head of the family during the lockdown. Her parents got locked down in the US for 6 months. So she had to step up and become the head of the family and attend to the physical, medical, and financial needs of her siblings and her nephew. So the lockdown caused her to discover her inner strength and resilience, her inner power, as she calls it. To visually convey that, she chose to appropriate characters from Visayan mythology and pre-colonial history. So this is where the Visayan Negrense imagery comes out. In her case, I think I have time to talk about only one work from each artist. So I will talk about sa Panulok ni Dalikmata of Elwa Gonzalez. That means that's Ilonggo for Dalikmata's points of view. Dalikmata is the ancient Visayan goddess of health, specifically health of the eyes. So you can see so many eyes, right?
Yeah.
So she's all-seeing and all-knowing, and her many eyes see the evil and misfortunes in the world, and she sheds copious tears in sympathy. And actually, these tears, according to mythology, become the morning dew, which the Babaylan, again another character from Visayan pre-colonial history, the Babaylan collects them in the morning and converts them to medicine or healing salves. So that's one way that Elwa made her imagery very much Negrense. The other one, another artist is Angela Silva. Her idea for this concept started with the notion of travel. But since of course she could not travel due to the lockdown, she time traveled by looking at her albums of photos and other
John Silva.
memorabilia.
Yeah.
Specifically her mother's files and passports, which she kept. Apparently, she is the family archivist and historian. So her collection, Angela's collection, is called All About Her, and it focuses on the extraordinary life of a complicated woman, her mother, Elena, who
Yeah.
was a willful and intelligent sugar plantation heiress. I don't know if you know, but Negros practically equals sugar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Used to have the monocrop. It was a monocrop economy in the past, and when sugar was up, it created so many millionaires, perhaps even billionaires, generations ago. Anyway, Elena went through several relationships. She raised a family almost on her own, and even went through a period of homelessness and alcoholism in the USA. But her collection actually shows the story of her life as an arc. It starts with 2 mixed media collages, which act like bookends. So there's the Sugar Babies 1937, which shows the extreme wealth of her family at that time. And then it ends with a collage of called Where is the Love 2021, which is the artist's personal notes to her mother. It's the artist as a daughter coming to terms with the kind of woman her mother was. And in between, she has 7 artist books, which you can see on screen, in the size of her mother's actual passports. And they actually unfold and expand in various ways to show the narrative of Elena's adult life throughout time. She has folds such as the accordion fold, the Turkish fold, which conceals identities of lovers, the flag fold, which shows the parallel yet separate lives of Elena and her children.
Wow.
So that's one. That's another identity of the Negrense sugar plantation heiress who actually transforms into many other, or becomes many other kinds of women. Another artist is Karina Brose Gonzaga. She's a young urbanite who was very happy-go-lucky and a bit on the worldly and consumerist side, she admits,
Nice.
pre-pandemic. But when the lockdown happened, she had to deal with confinement and isolation and the hard realization that she didn't really need all this stuff. She had a mental reset. So she decided to give away her clothes, specifically her clothes, because apparently she was fond of clothes. And she gave away clothes, not old clothes, not just old clothes, but even new clothes that she decided she no longer needed.
Nice.
And then she kept some of them, of course, to wear for her daily, usage, and some for her artwork. So with her clothes, she hand cut them, she shred them, blend them, mix them, glue them together, and formed organic
It's
forms of
beautiful.
Yeah.
I like
nature,
it. Pops of
inspired
color.
by her grandmother's lush garden in San Carlos City in Negros Occidental, which apparently, the lingua franca there is more Cebuano rather than Ilonggo because it is close to Cebu.
Look at
So
that.
her
It's so
collection is
unique.
called Hinamot Unta.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's again the identity of a worldly woman metamorphosing into a more mature, minimalist, responsible, and environmentally conscious woman. Another artist is. I hope you don't mind. I have a couple of more. I think.
Yes,
Right.
Gina, I
Another
was
artist
thinking
is Josephine Turalba.
all these stories are also very interesting, and we'd like you to continue after we take a short break.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Araneta City, home to the country's first indoor shopping mall, the world's original Thrilla, and the first ever Bini Bini pageant. Now a place for your first win, your first catch, your first home, your first big break, your first date, and even your first love. Araneta City, the city of firsts.
And we are back on Spotlight. I am Dina Ventura, and I'm here with Vernon Velasco.
Hello. Yeah.
And we are here with three beautiful women.
Mm-hmm.
Gina Jocson, a curator, and artists Moreen Austria and Katarina Estrada.
And yeah, before we took a short break, we sort of cut off Gina about her discussion about
The artist.
The artist.
The
Yeah.
artist, yes.
Yeah.
I believe I stopped off at Josephine Turalba's work. Yes, Josephine, her connection to Negros is really her mother, who is a Negrense from the fabled family that owns the ruins. I don't know if you're familiar with the ruins in Bacolod, but it was a Hacienderos mansion that was burned in World War II by Filipino guerrillas to prevent the Japanese from occupying it. Anyway, The artworks are prompted or triggered by Josephine's own desire to find her own identity as a Negrense, especially as her mother is losing her memory. So she felt the urgency to capture and chronicle her mother's memory and therefore identity. And she does this, one of the ways in which she does this is through appropriating the Mahjong set. Well, Mahjong is a very popular game of chance and leisure among Negrense women of a certain, social class, especially in the 60s up to the 90s. And during the lockdown, many women, Negrense women, came back to the game to distract themselves from the lockdown, of course, from the pandemic. So Josephine appropriates the Mahjong game and transforms it into an interactive and educational artwork that prompts questions and dialogues. Her artwork is called Tauhai, which is Ilonggo for restful, tranquil, comfortable, and it's very playable. So, and as you play the Tauhai Mahjong artwork, you will learn about her stories as opposed to his stories. So, stories of women in Negros, from the Babaylan of pre-colonial times to the haciendera of the last century, to the current day civic leader helping in the fight against the COVID. Another artist is Megumi Miura. She's half Japanese, half Negrense, but she's lived in Negros for the last decade. Her inspiration is actually the Sakada. The Sakada is a migrant worker who works on a project basis, either usually to plant or to harvest. And there are women who are Sakadas. And they're usually dressed that way. They have head coverings that protect their head, nose, neck, and mouth. And it's usually made of an old T-shirt or cloth. Protect them against the heat, the sharp blades of the sugarcane, the insects. But in this time of the pandemic, this headgear also doubles up as protection against the virus. So that becomes their pinaka-mask. So what Megumi is trying to say is that before, during the pandemic, and most likely even after the pandemic, the status of these Sakada women will remain the same. They will still be at the bottom of the economic totem pole, and they will still look exactly like that. But in her artwork, she portrays the Sakada women as contemporary women, which they are, and some of them may be fashion conscious and they may go through ukay and fake branded goods. So she has applied all these branded labels on their clothing to show that that inclination and aspiration on their part. So these are hand sculpted with using epoxy clay and acrylic paint.
I was wondering, Gina, I mean, specifically on this, what is the most challenging to presenting voice?
To presenting, sorry?
Presenting voice, yeah. On this
Voice?
one. Yeah.
You mean for the artist?
I mean, for the whole exhibit, I mean, how do you make them all coherent together?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, naturally, when I gave them the curatorial premise and prompt, and I sat down, well, virtually, of course, because I'm in Manila, with each one of them several times over the last 6 months, in order for them to help them, assist them in their investigation of the different identities. Of course, they had to do the research, but I would just help them along by asking questions, prodding them, perhaps even pushing them in case deadlines are coming near. But
Nangungulit.
Yeah.
But I have to make sure that they all present a clear identity of the Negrense woman in their work. May I just mention the last artist,
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
Erica Mayo, and the identity she focuses on is of the Negrense woman as outspoken as an activist and journalist, someone who is not afraid to speak her mind, especially in the light of aggressions against women and the irresponsible red tagging that had been done in Negros in 2020. Because I don't know if you remember, but in last year, the Anti-Terror Act of 2020 was passed, and then there was a deployment of military and police in Negros through Memorandum Order number 32. And so, and specifically in Negros. So while the for Erica, while the strict home quarantine was there to protect us, protect Negrense women from the virus, it also served as a mask, a muzzle for outspoken women, those who were protesting against, whatever was happening, and a lot of them were women, and therefore violence against women actually kind of increased in Negros. So she wanted to honor this identity of the activist through her work, and she uses distressed canvas that she put out into the elements outside for like roughly 3 weeks, and because for her the distressed canvas is a metaphor for skin. So when we go out into the world, our skin is affected. It shows, it's like a chronicle or a record book of whatever happens to us. So she uses that and applies that to her paintings to allude to the thick skin that women also need to have in order to remain outspoken and not to be shut up by others. So again, that's another very, very true Negrense identity of the outspoken activist.
Gina,
So I've covered all 8 artists.
yeah. Gina, I was wondering, how do you find new artists and new ideas? I mean, we have Moreen and Katarina there. When there's just a slew of, a lot of budding artists
So
out there.
many.
So many, yeah.
How
And
do
they're the
you-
chosen ones.
How do you choose?
Yeah,
They're the chosen ones.
yeah.
Actually, it depends on the concept as well. So I have a concept in mind, and then I like to say that a curator is also kind of like to define a curator. I look at what a curator does, and a good analogy is perhaps a movie production crew. So I'm number one, the script writer or screenwriter. So I come up with the concept, I write all the text, and then I'm also head of casting department. But then I select the artists, but based, of course, on their previous work, on their art practice, and I see their capability to flesh out my concept. And then I'm the director because I put everything together. I work with the artists and with the managers of the space. In this case, it's a Salcedo Private View, which is the gallery platform of Salcedo Auctions. So there are overlapping roles actually that the curator must embody in order to make an exhibit work and look cohesive and coherent. So it's not I don't pick like whoever's trending or whoever is I don't know, because I try to separate art market from a show. We can be independent as a show and be exhibited in any place.
Yeah, I think I get what Gina means. So you choose because based on the stories that you want to tell and the story as a whole that the exhibit wants to tell. So that's how you choose the artists. Am I
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay. So I've gotten a sense of what the Negrense woman is and what Negrense artists go through.
Yeah, through the flash. Yeah.
And so I was just wondering, what are the difficulties that Negrense artists or regional artists face in this pandemic?
Yes, maybe we have 2 points of view here from Katarina because she's a regional artist but based in Manila, and Moreen Austria because she is still based in Negros.
Negros, yes.
Yes, well, taking from the viewpoint of a regional artist that's already here in Manila, in my experience, in my own journey, whether starting in Bacolod or here in Manila, I was really spurred on by the support and encouragement of my Orange Project family. So I'm very grateful to them. And that being said, I feel that one of the challenges that in eking out a name in the Manila art scene is it has to do with the lack of presence, I feel. So in pre-COVID times, going to gallery openings was one of the ways I used to aid me in building relationships with new people in the art world. So, I'd get to meet new artists or other artists, or I'd get to talk to the gallery owners or the curators, and then build that conversation around our different art practices. So, fortunately for us, however, since we do live in a digital age, and although social media can only go so far in terms of creating those vital connections, I still feel that it's a great tool to get our work out there, and then hopefully spark other dialogues and conversations with our contemporaries in the art scene, whether here in Manila or anywhere else in the Philippines or in the world in general. Personally, though, relating to the show that we have now, which is Istorya Namon Subong, one of the challenges I face during the conceptual phase of our exhibition is how to reconcile within myself that feeling of disconnect, since I haven't been able to go home or to fly home to Bacolod since the outbreak. How I did that, though, how I found my way back to my roots, was that although it was a difficult process, I did a whole lot of introspection. I got in touch with my familial heritage, not only through research, but to talking to my mother, her memories of my grandparents, and then living in Bacolod, living in the farm. And so that was how I was able to overcome that particular hurdle to create my series for the show.
Okay, so going back to the roots and connecting again.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about Moreen?
Oh, yeah, okay. I think what had been then a glaring marginalization of provincial artists had somehow been eased because of over the years, because of this digital platform, which has especially boomed or has become, we have shifted into the online platform simply because for now, you don't really have much choice. So, I think what I'm trying to say is what used to be very little or no opportunity to show in Manila to be heard has been addressed with this online platform. And there's also a move to decentralize the Philippine art scene. So now you see a lot. In fact, in the Art Fair Philippines of 2020, you have seen regional artists being featured, like Perry Argel, Joe Geraldo, which has not really happened years ago. So now it's being, that marginalization now is easing. And although I still think there's still might, with the emphasis on the word might, there's still might be a stigma of regional art not as good as the Manila art.
Oh, really?
As the art from in a way, there's because if coming from a point, but if I see the from my observation, and I might be wrong. So some collectors who collect art as a form of investment would always think twice on investing on original artists. I think that may be a fact. So if you see here, it's not really equal footing from the start. And I'm also thankful to Salcedo Auctions for giving us Negrenses the opportunity to show and to give this platform to let the art from the regions be seen.
Yeah, I agree, because it's really nice to see the stories, to hear about the stories of Negrense artists. It's so interesting. Ang gaganda.
Let's get back to Gina now before we take a short break. I mean, we know how it is for a lot of industries, finding a sweet spot in this COVID situation. But with a lot of museums, creative spaces closing down, have you ever put up, Gina, an exhibit in unconventional non-gallery spaces lately?
Well, I have, but not here in the Philippines though. I used to be based abroad, so I actually set up an exhibit in a castle
No.
in
Wow.
Fancy.
Prague. But personally, for me, a good show is a good show. It can be on the street, it can be on the sidewalk, it can be at a mall,
Mhm.
it can be in any place. But if it's a good show, it'll stand out. That's
Yes.
what I believe. And well, I know there are many kinds of collectors, but the collectors who truly try to understand what the artwork is trying to say,
Mhm.
I think they will see that and they will remember that hopefully and hopefully buy it as well.
Yeah. I think events like Art Fair Philippines and then Salcedo auctions, they really opened up um, art appreciation to everybody,
Yeah.
not just people in Metro Manila. And I was just wondering, though, I'm really curious because it hasn't been made available as it is now. The kind of art scenes we have in the different regions.
Mhm.
So I'm curious about the Negrense art scene. What is it like? Can you tell us a
Oh,
little
the
bit
art
more about
scene,
that?
yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, maybe Maureen should answer that first because she's right there. Mox.
Marie?
She's Marina, you're on mute.
So I guess we can have Maureen's answer after we take a short
Can
break.
include
Iba ng panahon, dami ng bago ngayon. Pati ang mundo natin, well, nagbago na rin. Buti ang bayan, bigger, better na. You can buy it sa centers, pati sa mga partners, may online pa at app. You can buy it with your fingers, still don't remittance and more. Online shopping, you can buy it all. Di magpadala, you can buy it all. Ano mang pera transaction, you can buy it all.
Sabayan ang pagbabago ng mundo for all your pera transactions, all new Bayan.
Fiber is the free and secure way to connect with friends and family anywhere. Send messages and make phone and video calls for free. Download Viber now.
You're watching Spotlight with All Things Negrense. Hello po, welcome back. Yeah, so we're going to have a very, very short game. So we're going to lay out your past works vis-a-vis your most
Latest,
present ones. Yeah,
the latest
that's
one.
the part of the exhibit. So, friend, I believe this is okay.
For
Yeah,
Gina.
those are my exhibits.
Okay.
Yes, then and now. So then I was in 2018. The picture on the left is shows my very very first curated exhibit here in Manila. That was called Unrefining Sugarlandia, and it was staged at Secret Fresh Gallery in Magallanes City. In fact, that show, there was a second iteration for that show around 6 months later at the Negros Museum. So a much bigger show, but still called Unrefining Sugarlandia. Same concept, but many more artists ranging from the young ones, the emerging, the established, and the senior artists of Negros. And since then, I've had exhibits every year, and of course, my latest one is ongoing at Salcedo Private View, Istorya Namon Subong, Our Stories Now. Yeah, and it's available for limited in-person viewing up to May 8th, which is actually coming up soon.
Yes.
But it will live on through their virtual gallery platform And that's what's great about the virtual gallery platform. It extends the life of the show and gives the show a huge reach, a more global reach, actually. And we are also included, by the way, as as part of the public programming of Salcedo Private View for this year's art fair, for the ongoing art fair Philippines.
Next is we're going to train the light on the artworks of Moreen. So Moreen, can you tell us something about your past works and then
The
the latest one?
That was my first sculpture ever.
Yeah.
Wow, what is it made of?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I felt very proud of it. Imagine from, I was just a person painting for as a hobby, and then suddenly I have done my first 3D work in a form of that is made of the first sculpture, which is I think the title is wrong. That's the pas de doigts.
Patadwa.
Yeah, inspired by a dance.
Yeah.
It was made of stucco, concrete, and some junk materials and brass. It was the early times that I started learning how to weld. So proud na proud akong mag-weld.
Yeah.
And then after, I still have that same material. There is a trace of brass, the same material, and I think the similar thing is now. This is also my first time exhibiting in a new
Clay.
medium, the terracotta. But this now it's more colorful because the pandemic has affected me in such a way that it made me think, being happy, think happy thoughts, appreciate ordinary things and being happy with it. So it has to be expressed in colors.
Yeah, you can see the difference.
So-
I mean, it could
Yeah.
have been made by two different people.
Yeah. It's a glow up. Total glow up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Next up is Katarina's. What fancy?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, hi. So that's actually my very first show. Well, the show that I feel really brought me when I started thinking of art seriously. Funnily enough, I was already based here in Manila. The then picture is a piece for Jocson. It was my show. It's a duo exhibition with another fellow Negrense artist named Daryl Ferrell. We knew each other in college, and then we only reconnected again for this show, which happened in House of Frida in Bacolod still. So despite me already being based here in Manila that time, I flew and was present for the show. So it's funny because as even now, me seeing it now, back then I was really just focused on bodies, but then in the Josson's piece, you would see that the head is actually not of a person, it's of a stag.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so strange now that suddenly it's shifted from my seeing just the body in general of any human being, whether female or male. And then now it's shifted to the work for Salcedo, which is really
More of faces.
is a self-portrait and of more of my identity as the artist. So, thank you also, Stella.
Yeah.
It just hit me now,
Oh,
Yeah. It has been a delight having you with us here, ladies. So, final thoughts? Yeah.
Final thoughts.
Yeah, Gina.
Well, I want to tell everybody that the art world in the Philippines, the art scene, is more than just Manila. People should look outside Manila to the regions, and of course, I believe the Visayas region, and of course Negros, Negros Occidental is at the forefront of the burgeoning art landscape in that area.
Yeah.
So I think serious collectors should really take a good look at art from the regions.
Yes.
Moreen, Katarina.
Oh, well,
I'd just like to invite them.
Yeah.
You go first. Go
That's
first, Kat.
so funny. Okay, my final thoughts really, what I feel for the art scene is we just keep continuing, especially for Visayan artists, just keep experimentation and exploration upwards and onwards. And we shouldn't let uh, thinking like thinking that in the sense just because we're regional artists doesn't mean that our works can't match those from Manila. In a way, I feel like we have that Visayan flavor going.
Yes.
So yeah, so to everyone who's trying to make it to the Manila art scene, we can just go for it.
Yeah.
Just be yourselves.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to inject that something special about the Negros art scene.
Yes.
Thought, yeah. Well, it breathes and lives outside Manila, and it's really a dynamic community. And this group of artists, just having one goal, that is to use art as a medium of communication and to contribute to our community, whether be it in Negros or the Philippines in general, or the Philippine art scene. So, art in the regions, art from Negrense is something to watch out for.
Yeah.
Yes.
Negrense art scene out of the pandemic, out of the box. So with that, we'd like to thank you all again.
For joining us this afternoon, Miss
Yeah.
Gina,
Maureen
Moreen,
and
and Katarina.
And that's it for,
Thanks so much, you guys.
thank
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. And that's it for today's Spotlight. My name is Vernon Velasco.
I'm Dina Ventura. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.